film like this, I'm thinking, okay, and he's got the lower third hustler. That's his lower third, his hustler, right? And so you're like, is this a reliable source? Like, is he a reliable source? I don't know. How do we know he's even telling the truth? And is he really repenting, or is he pulling one over us? So how did you get under the hood of that and feel like, okay, yeah, this guy's really,
That's the central magic of Lev as a character in this film, because everything he says is completely unbelievable. Everything. I mean, up to hello, you don't believe him. And then it turns out he has documented all of it. All of it. And the more insane the story or the anecdote or the proposition that you're hearing from Lev, the more likely it is that he can show you receipts. In some cases, literal receipts, that these things happened. And to have Tony Andre, and to have the lawyer who chased him to the ends of the earth, and the investigative journalist who chased him to the ends of the earth being like, yeah, we found all the receipts, this all actually happened. It's that, I feel like, is the central absurdity of the film, that something this crazy happened, and yes, it really happened, and he can prove it.
Which is so insane that nobody is tracking this guy, that they don't realize he's taking all these photos, he's recording everything, he's got all the text, they're not even using Signal, I don't know, did he not take digital security class? What is happening?
It would be like if in Watergate, G. Gordon Liddy was just running a tape recorder the whole time.
They operated with a level of impunity. That's been the Trump story his entire life. A guy born on third base who thinks he scored a touchdown. Real stable genius. And to this day has never had any consequences for any of his misbehavior. And so that sends a message, I think, to not only to him in the way in which he's carried on his life, but to everyone around him. And Svetlana makes the very well. More often than not, when I say somebody in this movie makes an interesting point, it's usually Svetlana. Give her credit, but she says, like, a President Hillary Clinton, a President Barack Obama, a President Biden would never have a guy like Lev. No one in their administration would let him hit 1,000 yards, from the president. But this is what this presidency, what do you say? He's a New York hustler. So it was a magnet for ghouls and grifters and all of these types of characters where you're just like, these are the president's men. This is the best. This is the best they could come up with, and in truth it was, and they felt they could act however they wanted.
And that's part of the reason that I don't think we could have ever set out to guarantee that the film would come out before the election because of the market and all the other things. But I am glad that it's come out before the election, not necessarily because I feel like, it's a bad stuff about Trump that people should hear and they should have that in mind when they vote, but rather, this is a useful time capsule to know what happens when crooks take over the White House. When crooks take over the White House, this is the way the White House runs. And I don't know if Donald Trump is going to get back into the White House. He might. I think it will actually be different. I think that it'll be much more professional if he gets in for another term. I don't think it'll be exactly like this. But the first time he had a shot at it, this really is how he ran foreign policy, his re-election campaign, diplomacy, and the budgeting process. This is how we decided whether or not Ukraine was getting military aid. Really? And it was a foreign influence operation. Keeping Russia in the title is also important. This was a foreign influence operation. And it was a foreign influence operation that found very fertile ground in that campaign, in that administration, and this is what it looked like, and we should never forget that even if it wasn't the biggest scandal, this was superseded by the second impeachment, and then the violent effort to overthrow the government. There's a lot of Trump stuff, but we should never forget that this happened.
Well, it is an amazing portrait of corruption and also the ways that power can work. So not that it has always works this way, but the ways, the levers that get pulled when people get into positions of power. So that's the thing that is so fascinating about it, is that he can weave that entire tale, to your point, with the evidence, with the stories, with the anecdotes, with all the things, And then we kind of have this clear understanding, like, oh, this is how that worked. What else don't we know about how things unfolded? To that point, the ending is quite a surprise, and so kudos to that, because it's like, wait, Hunter's now they're gonna have this moment. Tell us a little bit about, Lev reaching out to Hunter, and I mean, frankly, I was like, why in the hell would Hunter want to talk to this guy? Like, I don't understand. Human psychology is so fascinating. What is going on?
Can I just interject and ask you guys, were any of you surprised by that ending? Yes. Even, it's recovery.
No, we're speaking about Rachel Maddow.
It was absurd, obviously. And as Rachel has in the past aptly described, so much of Lev's story is stupid. It's just like, but if not for the receipts, if not for the evidence. And remember, for every text from Rudi in this documentary, I think the ratio is probably 1,000 to 1 of like actual text messages that we have that Lev turned over, his entire contact book, his iCloud, it's remarkable. And so Lev calls me in early May, and we have we're between Rough Cut 1 and Rough Cut 2, so we have all 11 segments mapped out. We're trying to get this thing delivered in about 3 or 4 months. And Lev says, I'm talking to my probation officer about traveling out of the state. This is Florida man problems, you see. And he says, I want to go to California to meet with Hunter Biden face to face to apologize to him. Would you be interested in filming that?
Think about it, I don't know.
No, I wouldn't. But it was also ridiculous. I was like, there's a lot of interesting things I'd like to film that will never happen, and I'll add that to that list of things that will never happen. He said, no, talk to this guy, this conduit for the family, for the Bidens, and I talked to him, and we set a date of Sunday, July 7th, and I think it's hilarious, because I think it's no chance. And then an interesting thing happens. Hunter Biden gets convicted on that gun trial in California. And I called Lev and I said, Lev, so obviously this isn't going to happen anymore. No, it's going to happen, it'll happen. And then the debate happens, June 26th, 27th. And I'm like, well, obviously this isn't going to happen anymore. The president has to hunker down with his family, determine his political future. Lev's like, no, it's going to happen. So then I go and fly to California from Miami, thinking at best 50-50 this is going to happen on Sunday. I really thought it was a 0% chance. And then Sunday, I wake up with a text message from a number I don't know that says, this is Hunter Biden, please call me. And I call, and it is Hunter Biden. And we have a brief but really interesting conversation. And he says, like, just basic logistics, is this the time and place? He goes, well, what are we going to talk about? I said, whatever you want to talk about. I said, we're just going to follow Lev in, and you guys, I said, you can shake his hand, you can hug him, you can punch him in the face, like, I don't care, like, whatever, do you. And
I will be there with a camera.
yeah, whatever it is, I'll film that, rest assured. And so and then we had a really interesting conversation about addiction, which I've had in my immediate family, and then he says, the next call you get is from the United States Secret Service. Be sure you pick it up. And so I did, and it was the Secret Service, just reviewing and confirming some of the logistics, and then we shot it. And then when it was over, we cut. They hugged a lot during the meeting. And when we cut, Svetlana was there, and Melissa, Hunter Biden's wife, was there. And Svetlana goes, so much touching. There's a lot more touching than I thought there would be. Which got everybody cracked up just like you did. But it was incredible. There was like, I don't know if you could hear it off some of the mics, we tried to mix it out, but there was sniffles coming from some of the crew members during that meeting. And I remember saying to Svetlana later, I said, remember in your interview when you told me Lev happened? I'm like, I didn't understand that until today. Like, just the weird, dumb shit that, like, for better or worse, like, he kind of, like, instigates or makes happen. And my understanding, I don't want to speak for Hunter Biden, but my understanding from our brief phone call was that the reason he was doing this was that he was working a program in which he had to go to his family and loved ones and ask for forgiveness for the most horrible things that he had done and subjected them to. And he felt, who am I to deny this man his opportunity to make amends? And that was the spirit, I think, of his thinking.
Were you surprised that this unfolded? What do you think?
I was in a podcast recording studio and I got a series of urgent text messages. I know you're recording, I know you're recording, I know you're recording, you have to call me, you have to call me, you have to call me. And it was Jack from Surprise, Jack Orr from Surprise Inside, who I work with, who was talking to you guys about this possibility. And I was like, I have something to tell you, it's good news, I think it's good news, it might be really bad news. Like, is this something involving you and your wife, Jack? Like, I had no idea that it was, and he was so urgent. And then he told me what was happening, and I was like, yeah, call me when it happens. I'm very busy. Like, I never even put it in my calendar because I thought the chance that it would happen was zero. And then actually, after the debate, NBC News reported that while President Biden was deciding how to handle the fallout of the debate and making his decision, that Hunter Biden was with him and at the White House and meeting with his father and very close to that decision-making process, which to me, at that point, I just closed off the possibility that it would ever happen. But I would also just say, like, talking about the crew getting people be feeling emotional in that moment, like, they're totally apart from the politics of this. That is a model of like big boy behavior there that is really moving to me. And for them both, it is, I think, coming from a place of recovery, as you're describing. Both actually from Lev and Hunter's side. Lev is with gambling, and Hunter with addiction. But for them both to be able not only to apologize and to offer forgiveness, but to be able to explain why they needed to do it and to put detail behind it and to sit there with the emotions of it and to greet each other where they are. I mean, not only is that no punching, but that is a model of, I think, like adulthood that is very moving.